This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details. Tech.
Wolves fans, listen up. You could win a pair of lower-level tickets to Game 3 on Friday against LA. To enter, send us a talkback on the iHeartRadio app and predict who scores first for the Wolves tonight. Winners will be randomly selected from the correct answers. Good luck, and go Timberwolves.
This is all listen line again, right? Regarding the Wolves tickets?
All talkback,
All
correct.
talkback. I
Yep.
should say, not listen line. Talkback. Thank you for that correction.
Sorry.
Kev, no, I for some reason I always call it that, and I don't know why. Seifert is in studio with us. Mitch Lawrence in about a half hour, and Louie at 5:30. This is a good entree into what we were discussing off air, Mr. Seifert. This is from John out of Playa Vista, California. Playa Vista?
Beautiful this time
California.
of year.
I assume it's got to be.
Yeah.
Hi, Kevin. Is the real reason the Vikings haven't made a move for a backup QB solely because they value that April 29th deadline to keep some compensatory pick that will obviously be a future Hall of Fame player? Why would they give up more to trade for Cousins when they already gave him the key to their coffers? Go Wolves. That again is John in Los Angeles.
Well, I think it is part of it, but both Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell in the past few days have said it's not the sole reason. And I agree that you wouldn't want to bring everything to a screeching halt for the sake of protecting a potential 5th or 6th round pick that you might get in the 2026 draft. I think it's part of it, but not the only part. And I think we're left to conclude that what happens in the draft for other teams potentially will affect their decision, or if there really is a trade that might be happening, it could be an in-draft trade that the Vikings end up getting a backup quarterback from.
And could that trade involve Kirk Cousins?
Potentially, yeah. It's definitely, there's definitely potential there. He has a no trade clause. The news today actually is that he showed up at the Falcons voluntary offseason program.
And this is a surprise, correct?
It had been assumed that he would not. And in fact, Raheem Morris, the Falcons coach, said last month at the owners' meetings that wouldn't expect under the circumstances for anybody to show up, if somebody was in Kirk Cousins' circumstances, which is showing up for voluntary workouts when you're clearly looking to move on from your situation and the Falcons are kind of sitting on you. And so I don't know if that was a strategic thing or he just needed to get in his workout and decided to do it at the Falcons facility, but he is in fact there. The Falcons are making pretty clear around the league that they do not want to just give him away, which would be the case if they just cut him and then let him sign elsewhere. But he has a no trade clause, so they need his cooperation. There's lots of different options out there for how a trade could be structured. Kirk obviously wants to go somewhere where he would start. It appears as though the last starting job that's more or less open in a realistic sense right now is Pittsburgh, and they appear to be, at least for now, waiting on Aaron Rodgers. So it may end up being a situation for Kirk Cousins where he has to decide, if I'm going to be a backup, do I just want to do it in Atlanta? Mm-hmm. Would I rather do it somewhere else? Would I rather do it in a situation where there's a better chance for me to play? Those are all factors that he would have to consider.
Is there a scenario in terms of a trade in which the Vikings might be interested or willing to take on more of the financial responsibility if they get something important, crucial in return?
Yeah, in theory, there could be. Adam Schefter wrote about part of this yesterday in his column, for the pre-draft column, that maybe a team like the Vikings or Steelers would be willing to take on maybe $10 million of the $45 or so million that Kirk Cousins is owed as part of a trade, in which they would then give draft picks or a player, I guess, in theory, to the Falcons. But the other thing that, at least to think about, and I don't have any great inside knowledge that this is being discussed, but it's happened before in the NFL, where you take on more or all of that money And instead of giving the Falcons a draft pick for him, you actually get draft picks from them as sort of compensation for taking on the contract. This happened with the Browns and Texans and Brock Osweiler a while back, and the Browns acquired Brock Osweiler, the quarterback from the Texans, and he had like $16 million on his contract, and they got a second-round pick to do it, essentially, and then they end up cutting Osweiler.
Right.
It was just a way to buy a draft pick, basically.
Which we want some.
Yeah.
Although this ain't going to happen before the draft.
I don't know. I wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
But it would be for next year or whatever. So it's it's another creative way to think about, like, how could they get a really qualified additional quarterback without giving up draft picks.
Sam Howell's name has come up a couple of times. Allegedly, he's going to be available. And didn't KOC say all options are on the table? Presumably that includes a trade in which you wouldn't have to give up much to just get somebody that you view as a legitimate backup?
Yeah, he was pretty adamant in saying that, like, first of all, I think in sort of subtly pushing back on the idea that they're just at a point where we'll take whoever's there when we're ready to do it. Like, that they have a better plan than that, because right now the free agent market is kind of down to Carson Wentz and maybe Ryan Tannehill. And so he said trade, he said free agent, and he said even the draft. I have a hard time thinking they'll draft someone to be their backup quarterback with the small amount of picks, but we'll see if that's what he even meant with that or just a draft-related trade. But Sam Howell last year was acquired by the Seahawks to be Geno Smith's backup quarterback, played a little bit, did not play very well. And then they traded Geno Smith, signed Sam Darnold, then signed Drew Lock. So the idea is that he'd be expendable. Another guy who could be expendable based on what happens in the draft is Aiden O'Connell, who had been the Raiders starter, but has been supplanted by that Geno Smith trade. And so we'll see there. Like, there's some people. Those are some people. I don't know if that, like, if either any of them fit sort of the Daniel Jones idea of, like, it's not only like a quarterback you're going to play if your starter JJ McCarthy gets hurt, but it's a quarterback you're comfortable throwing out there to potentially win games if he's just not ready yet.
Referring to our conversation earlier, looks like, let me double check the name here. Brad says Ward being number 4 in last year's draft would make him better than McCarthy. You said Ward might go the 4th overall pick.
Yeah, they might, maybe.
So you think he's a better prospect than J.J. McCarthy? Because that's going to there's going to be some depression here on that.
It was my first glance thing, but and the larger point was that he wouldn't be anywhere close to where they were then. But I guess that would possibly put him ahead of Penix too. And so, regardless, like, the point is this year's draft last year would have been a much better year for anybody to be looking for a quarterback than this year.
Don't take me literally, take me figuratively, is I think what you're trying to say.
Take the broader point, and if you want to quibble with the details, that's your.
Don't get defensive on JJ.
Yeah.
So, explain to me. I need some translation. I think he was at the podium. Was that yesterday?
Yes.
And there's something weird to me that's going on where I almost feel like, and maybe it's just because there's nothing else to talk about. We're chronicling or asking him to chronicle. Yes, he's in the building. Yes, he's done. I mean, have we kind of lost our minds in our thirst for J.J. McCarthy information before there's anything really to give?
No. I mean, I will tell you, like, anecdotally, the very first thing that anyone asks me about if I'm out and about is about McCarthy. And then
but what do they want to know?
How is he looking? What's he?
We don't know, right?
The quote unquote news yesterday was that he was cleared and ready to hit the ground running.
But didn't we kind of know that?
And we kind of already knew that, and it was like one of the top stories on ESPN. Right. So it's not even like Vikings fans. Like I would say, and not to get into a big rabbit hole of how news is judged, but the advent of the internet has allowed us to track what people are interested in ways that we couldn't when we wrote news stories for the newspaper. And if you write a story about J.J. McCarthy that has his name in the headline, people are going to be interested in it.
I'm asking you to rise above that.
The point of writing is for it to be read. And so, And so it's our responsibility to make sure that when we're writing something, it's something that is of interest and it's not just fluff.
But I bet you get even more views if you found a way to add Aaron Rodgers to it, but you don't always force that.
I will. That's a good idea, though.
Well, something to think about. Grand in your hand. Let's do it to stay on schedule, and then we have one more segment with Seifert to talk draft stuff. If you have questions, 64686 Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line.
The Fan and BigDeck.com want to give you a shot to win bonus bucks with our national cash contest. Head to KFAN.com, enter the keyword money. The keyword is money, KFAN.com, keyword money. It's a late night game night, and what better way to watch than with Carboni's Pizza? Visit one of their 30-plus locations to enjoy delicious pizza and get ready for a Minnesota playoff run. Find your nearest Carboni's today at carbonispizza.com and catch tonight's game on the Timberwolves iHeartRadio channel.
Trade 24 to Cleveland, 33 plus Watson. Is he saying for us to acquire?
So the same thing that I was talking about.
Oh, what you were talking about.
But do it for Deshaun Watson, and so basically buy it. I assume what he's saying is take on Deshaun Watson's contract in exchange for draft picks.
But I trust him less than I do Kirk Cousins.
In that case, you might do what. I mean, it's irrelevant because he's not going to be available to play this year. That's where the Browns are really screwed. Is that he's not even if you wanted to stay committed to him, you can't because he retore his Achilles tendon. But so in that situation, you would just be acquiring his contract in exchange for the Browns giving you some draft picks.
Kevin Seifert is in studio for just a few more minutes. We'll get to some pro basketball playoff stuff with Mitch Lawrence after him, and then Louie will join at about 5:30. So right now we have 4 picks?
Yep.
Do you think, there's been a tendency under this regime to move down anyway, to get greater picks, number of picks. Do you think then there's every reason to think it might rule the day again, especially if you look at your evaluation of players and convince yourself that there's not a massive difference between 24 and let's say, 30 or whatever, and you get an extra pick out of it? Or because I've tended to believe in the at 24, you still should be able to get a good player. Don't worry about numbers so much as getting the best player you can get. How do you think they're going to play it?
Yeah, it's interesting because in trying to establish a Kwesi Adofo-Mensah pattern, it's hard because that first year they did do the big trade down from 12 to 32. And then some more picks, and they ended up with a bunch of second rounders, the 32 pick where they got seen, and then a bunch of second rounders. And then the next year, they basically stood pat. That was the Jordan Addison year. And then last year, they traded up twice. They traded up to get one pick to get McCarthy, and then used a ton of picks to trade up to get Dallas Turner at number 17. So they've been all over the map. I don't think that he's going to feel compelled to trade down just to get more volume, even though that's kind of like the classic analytics draft approach is volume, that nobody's great at picking players. Some are marginally better than others. Your best bet is the more bites out of the apple you can take, the better chance you're going to get a good, tasting bite, I guess. And so, but there's no clear pattern that's the way he approaches the draft. So I do not go into this thinking that, they have 4 picks, so naturally they're going to try to trade down and get an extra 3rd round pick or something, or they're going to try to get 2 fourths or, like that, like those would help. But they're also, as we talk about the young players that they've acquired, there hasn't been a lot of impact. Like really the Jordan Addison draft is the one impact player in all of the drafts that they've had so far. Maybe J.J. McCarthy becomes another. Maybe Dallas Turner becomes another. So it's the book's not closed on that. But I think there's definitely an urgency to get impact players, and every step you move down is a little bit less of a chance of doing that.
The weirdest moment in any Vikings draft that you have covered?
Well, I was there for the back-to-back. In 2002, they tried to jump the Cowboys, who were late, and try to draft a guy named Ryan Sims, who was a defensive tackle.
Remember him, yeah.
And the the Cowboys and Chiefs did a trade, and the Chiefs, like, there was like a physical like thing at the desk when you turn in the card, and so the Chiefs guy got there ahead of the Vikings guy, and they ended up with Brian McKinney. And that one was weird because they were upset that they weren't able to execute that, and I think Red McCombs was upset about it as well. And then next year was the infamous one where they were picking 7th, and then all of a sudden somebody else picked 7th, and then somebody else picked 8, and then they didn't come around until 9, and they had thought they had consummated a trade with the Ravens for the to move down, and then the Ravens never reported it, so they just missed their pick for 2 straight times and got Kevin Williams at number 9, so it all worked out, but it played out on national TV. Denny Green happened to be the analyst on ESPN and was having a hoot and holler at the time with it, so those were 2 nationally known moments that are long gone in Vikings history, but remembered by some.
Are you familiar with Cheesehead Central?
It's like
I don't know if it's a person, an entity.
What are they saying?
Well, this was from a few days ago, but you and I haven't discussed this. I want to get your reaction to it. You're familiar with Mark Murphy? He is, I think, still the Packers president and CEO, yep. Correct? Mm-hmm. Murphy recently spoke about Aaron Rodgers on the tailgate tour, saying, quote, "I think somehow, some way, he's going to end up with the Vikings."
Just throwing one more.
Is he just trolling?
Throwing one more stink bomb Minnesota's way.
I mean, there's still conspiracy theories. As long as A-Rod doesn't sign, I don't think it's going to completely go away. Do you?
No, and Rodgers was on the McAfee show, and like at the end, like I didn't feel like I had any better idea of what was going to happen. I understood why nothing had happened yet. Yes. I think he did explain that, and I take him at his word that there's some things going on in his life that are taking priority right now with people around him. And so I understood why he hasn't signed yet. Do we know what that is? No, okay. I do not, in all honesty. And so, but like in terms of how it's going to play out, like I think he wants to play, if I had to answer that, or else if he was definitely going to retire, would he be doing McAfee and all that? And so like there's definitely part of him that still wants to play. He took the time to fly out to the Jets to talk to them. So if he was definitely not going to play, he wouldn't even probably have gone through with all that, and he wouldn't have gone through the visit to Pittsburgh that he did in person, incognito, and all that. So there's definitely, it appears as though he wants to play if things, happen to his liking. And I still think that in terms of the Vikings, it's what we've been saying is that if J.J. McCarthy gives them a reason to be worried at the end of this spring period, and if he's still around, then it becomes a possibility again. But, they had a chance to jump out and I think lock it down, and they decided not to.
Does Rodgers have a right to feel insulted about what he also talked about, which was I go all the way across the country, and they basically, we don't have a conversation. They tell me almost immediately, see you later, we're done. Or is that based on Rodgers' own history when it comes to bad cell phone service? Does it come off rather disingenuous? What did you make of that aspect?
Well, there's something to be said for like if they had said, okay, you don't have to come out here, we'll just have a phone call, and he would have said like they cut me over a phone call. Like would he have said that? I don't know because it didn't happen, but like you could wonder about that. He has the right to, I think, point out that no matter what they thought of him, like here was a guy who's had a ton of experience and has performed at a very high level. And if you're taking over an organization and a locker room that's going to be not exactly the same, but a lot of the same things in there, even if you weren't going to be bound by anything he told you, I would want to pick his brain, and I would want to see what he thought, and I would view it through the filter of this is Aaron Rodgers and he looks at things a certain way. Right. But like, he's not like evil incarnate. He's not like bereft of knowledgeable football takes. Like I bet he knows more offensive football than Aaron Glenn does. And maybe the GM as well. And so like I would have wanted to, and
that's
a
fair point.
And so I wouldn't have this is just me, and I'm not ever going to be an NFL coach, but I wouldn't have wanted to have a confrontation with a guy that is not going to be on the team anyway. And I would have wanted to use that moment for everything it could be used for, and it doesn't sound like they did.
Last item from our always astute audience. This is from Kyle out of Isanti. Does Seifert think the Vikings could possibly trade a Harrison Phillips since they acquired 2 defensive tackles and free agency, or possibly Addison before having to pay him next year and a new contract for the purposes of some draft stock?
On Addison, I would think
like him too much.
Yeah, but I think they would want to get him a third year out of him.
Yeah,
like a low paid. He's still on his rookie contract, and then. I'm not aware of anything going on that would make them want to urgently trade him now, and not necessarily. And then, whatever they get in return, you're trading certainty for hope,
exactly.
And
for the sake of saying we got another draft pick.
We got more draft picks.
Yeah.
Harrison Phillips, I think that when they run 3 defensive linemen on the field, he'd be one of the 3. So I don't know that there's an urgency there to trade him, and I'm not sure if the return would be worth what they would be losing. So I don't like that. It's smart for your listener to be thinking of players that they might trade because if they have to acquire a backup quarterback, or if they want to get more picks other than just the trade being picks for picks. And so I think that's not a bad thought in terms of maybe that's a creative way they could go about it. But whether it's those 2 players, I don't know.
See you Thursday night.
Okay, that'd be great to see you Thursday.
Probably won't. But I'll be watching.
Yeah, and
it's not that late. How late does round 1 go?
It's 10 minutes per pick, and so it's
I can't do that math.
It's gonna be 9-10 in that area, I think. So.
That's when stuff's just starting tonight, so that'll be considered easy.
Everybody will be on a night schedule.
True. That's very true.
Don't get up early.
Thank you.
Okay,
Kevin Seifert, always appreciate him coming in studio. In this case, a couple days before the historic National Football League draft in Green Bay. In fact, let me read a Gerby-related text that came in. This is from Zach. Shout out to Gerby for the hard work he's putting in. Not a job for the weak. Thank you for having him on. The Gerby Schmidt fan. You didn't write that, did you, Blakemore?
I did not.
But you approve of it, that's for sure. Let's shift the conversation to professional basketball. Some interesting results last night. And let's find out what Mitch Lawrence thinks about the Minnesota Timberwolves as they prepare to take on the Lakers in Game 2 after a very impressive opening game against Hollywood's team a couple of days ago. Stay tuned. Lawrence is there. Join a little less than an hour from now to preview Game 2, Stanley Cup Playoffs first round Western Conference Series, Wild in Vegas, needing a victory to even that series. The Lakers need a victory tonight at home to even their first round NBA Western Conference Series with the Minnesota Timberwolves. To help us digest what has happened so far in the NBA playoffs, our old friend Mitch Lawrence now joins via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Here's my toss-up question to you. Have the Minnesota Timberwolves already done enough to get your attention?
Absolutely. And I think they've done enough to get the Lakers' attention. The amazing thing to me was that in their playoff opener at home, the Lakers didn't put up any kind of a fight. They let Minnesota do whatever they wanted to. At the offensive end, they put up these ridiculous numbers, shooting-wise, the accuracy, the three-point shooting with the 21 threes. I mean, what were the Lakers thinking? They were going against, a G League team, one of Bronny's G League teams. It was ridiculous. I mean, it was, and LeBron didn't catch a lot of flack, and he's the leader of that team. So, that's the way the media deals with him. But yeah, I thought this was going to be a big-time battle, a 7-game series. I watched that game. I said, you know what? This just might be a bad matchup for a Laker team that I always thought was going to have trouble defensively stopping a team maybe like Minnesota. So we'll see how it plays out. But they're in great shape, the Timberwolves.
There was a stretch in the middle of that game, to your point, Mitch, when the Wolves outscored the Lakers 67-33. That's just not even real in the postseason, as you know. You also have covered enough playoff series to understand that there can be overreaction to a single game. That's always the question, right? Is
Right.
How real is this? It happened. Right. We all witnessed it, and it was dramatic, and it was impressive from a Wolves standpoint. But is there a danger in drawing too many conclusions from it?
Well, the thing I like about, and I think that J.J. Redick is thinking about too, is that they're going up against a battle-tested Minnesota team. Now, it does not, these guys are not, this is not Karl Anthony Towns, but still, a lot of the guys who last year went to the conference finals, and so I think that he knows this is not like an inexperienced team that got one on the road, and now they're just going to lay down. The other thing, too, is you're going up against every night in this for the next week or so, you're going up against LeBron James and Luka Doncic. And so going in, you have to, that gets your attention right away if you're the Timberwolves from a defensive standpoint. And they know if defensively they can handle those guys, then at the other end, they have a great success rate because, let's face it, I know the Lakers have done some great things defensively with Anthony Davis that kind of defies a lot of things. But the way they play, too, they give up a lot. Doncic is a terrible defender. LeBron, he has had better days. This is now a guy who's playing in his umpteenth series. He's 40 years old, 40 plus, whatever. He's not the same defensive player. They don't have a great rim protector. I think there are a lot of things going in Minnesota's favor and all of that. And I expect that this is a series where they're not going to let their guard down because the great thing for them is they know what it takes to get deep in the playoffs, having done it last year.
That's fair. And obviously, one of the questions was you subtract Towns, you add two good players, but how are they going to fit in? And it appears after a slow start, especially with Randall, that he has found a niche. And obviously, DiVincenzo has been more effective as the season has gone on. I think one of the things that distinguishes this Wolves team from last year's is that they can play. I think they proved even in game one, they can play a couple of different ways. Rudy only played 24 minutes in that game. And I think there's a lot more willingness on the part of the head coach to say, hey, I'll play him or I'll not play him if, based on matchups and the lineups, it's going a different way. Point is, I don't think they're afraid to mix and match. I think they can, to that extent, go smaller if they need to. But they're bigs, as you know, starting obviously with Naz Reid, and now even Jaden, who's developing more offensively, they can do stuff with the ball. They move well despite their height, and I think they couldn't do that against Dallas last year. I'm not sure they could play more than one way. This year, I think there's a chance they can, depending on matchups and circumstances, they can go big or they can go small.
And, I think the guys from New York give them that kind of grit and toughness that Karl Anthony Towns probably didn't in big spots, where they'll get on the floor, they'll take hard, they'll give a hard foul. The other thing that was impressive the other night, and this was just such a lopsided game, but how bad was the whistle against the Wolves in terms of the overall foul call?
Yes.
I know it ended 21-10. It was really 21-8 in the last couple of minutes.
Yep.
And here's the thing, if you're a hardened NBA fan who knows how things work in the playoffs historically, I think if you're Minnesota, your big concern is, as bad as the whistle was the other night, it could be even worse in terms of the free throw shooting disparity. Last game, it wasn't that bad. It was 16-10. But you've seen it and I've seen it, especially with Lakers. You get in a big game situation, and all of a sudden, they'll work the refs. They'll maybe, over the last couple of games, have talked to the league about, hey, watch for Minnesota doing this and that. And all of a sudden, the free throw disparity, not just the foul disparity, Dan, but the free throw disparity will come out like 30-10 or 28-11. We'll see how that plays out tonight. That's something you have to watch, and I'm sure Chris Finch is also cognizant of that.
I'm sure he will be in the ear of the refs, because clearly the Lakers are going to try to be a lot more physical. They have to. Now, whether they're good at that, I don't know, but they're going to have to try to do that. And then you do run the risk of, we're just going to start knocking people around a little bit more. and then we're going to dare you to call the fouls. I thought, as odd as that disparity was the first game, I really think in that case it was more a function of putrid defense. So much of the time, Mitch, there was not a defender close enough to a Wolves player to get called for a foul. I thought that was part of the disparity. The number of open shots was almost unprecedented in a playoff game.
Yeah, I mean, that's what shocked me about the Lakers' effort and their approach to the game. LeBron didn't have a foul in like 34 or 36 minutes, 38 minutes, whatever it was. He didn't have a foul. So, yeah, I think there's a lot more that the Lakers had to work on over the last couple of days than the Timberwolves. And listen, the Timberwolves go up 2-0, get this game tonight in what I think should be a much more hard-fought, contested game by the Lakers. And, I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden they got the Lakers down 2-0. And then you don't know, the thing that you have to remember about the Lakers is, with Luka now on this team, really for the first time in pressurized moments, I know they had some big games down the stretch. How's this team going to react? You just don't know versus what they did in previous years with Anthony Davis. So it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out. It's really one of the more intriguing matchups of the playoffs.
Well, part of this might well be that if you go back to last year, the Wolves-Mavericks series, the Wolves were in position to win a couple of those games early and just couldn't hang on. But, I think Luka had several advantages there. One is Kyrie. The Wolves could not handle Kyrie Irving at all. Right. So when Luka was out, Kyrie was in. And if at the end of the shot clock, even Luka couldn't get a shot off, Kyrie could also make a play, as you know. And then they had, 3 bigs taking alley-oop passes at their leisure. And there are no big men to be on the other end of those alley-oops for Luka to throw to. So part of it is, I think, it's the mix that Luka had then compared to what he has right now, even though you obviously have LeBron James on the team.
Luka played last year's Maverick team was a much better team and a much worse matchup for Minnesota than this Laker team.
Yep.
That's what it comes down to. Mm. So you're absolutely right. I mean, and let's not forget, even with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, who are really, talk about two of your worst defenders, they were a sensational defensive team for the last, 20, 30 games, plus the playoffs that got them at least to Boston and the finals. So, Luka's in a worse situation because Minnesota can still expose him defensively. He doesn't have a guy in back of him like Dallas did who can atone for his mistakes or his lack of trying, his lack of competitiveness at the defensive end. And at the other end, who's he throwing the ball to? Because they hardly play, Jackson Hayes is a
like 4 minutes, 5 minutes.
Non-factor. Yep. So this is for Minnesota, it's weird. Playing a third seed, this is a much, to me, not, I wouldn't say easier, but it's a better matchup all the way around. And the other thing, too, is, when you're playing in L.A. in front of all those fans, that's not a venomous, hostile
great point.
Crowd for the road team. You've been, Oklahoma City, Indiana. I can name 10
Boston.
places off the top of my head where, but the Laker crowd is not at all a place where guys go in there going, boy, we're going to be tested tonight with the crowd.
Mitch Lawrence, you can hear him on Sirius XM's NBA channel early and often. I think part of the Wolves' strategy with Luka, who traumatized them last year, right? He did. He toyed with them.
Ridiculous.
I think part of their formula, at least in theory, is we're going to try to do what we do as in the Wolves do with Joker, and that is we're willing to give him his 30 points. We might even be willing to give him his 40, but we want to try to prevent as much as possible him from becoming the game manipulator who is such an astute passer that he's making other people look better. He's making other people get open looks because that's kind of what happened with Luka. Luka had 37, 38 points, but he had 1 assist, 5 turnovers. And I think that's where they're saying we actually can live with his points as long as we're limiting their other people, especially Reeves, who, except for one stretch in the second half when the game was virtually over, was an absolute non-factor.
Well, I'm kind of wondering how they're going to approach things offensively tonight.
Yep.
Part of me thinks that the ball is going to be in LeBron's hands a lot.
That could be, sure.
Because there's the guy who's going to, what does LeBron do best? He goes to the basket and get the referees to force Minnesota to foul him, to get him to the line, to put the Wolves in foul trouble. Then you have Luka as another option after that. I think the big thing is how can we get Minnesota in foul trouble if you're J.J. Redick? Get LeBron going so we get the favorable whistle and make Luka more of a secondary guy. I think that's where they're probably going to try to go because, LeBron has that history where he starts getting downhill.
Yeah, that's true. It's a great point.
Whistles are favorable, and that's the way you can maybe figure this one out.
That's not a bad approach because they're gonna make some adjustments and they're gonna try some things for sure. You mentioned Cat earlier. The Knicks lose game 2 to the Pistons after really saving themselves in game 1 with that 21-0 run. I want to get your view as a guy who was obviously based in New York forever and knows the situation there pretty well. I see that Towns, the last field goal he took, the last shot he took in that game, it's astounding to me, was with 5 minutes to go in the third quarter. And he's getting grief, and I'm not saying he doesn't deserve some of it, but as much as I love and appreciate, like everybody, Jalen Brunson's tenacity, approach, toughness, the whole bit, Mitch, there are times where he doesn't look to me like he has any interest in including Karl Anthony Towns in the equation.
Or any other guy.
Well, that's it.
Like James
You're right.
Harden back in 2018.
Yes.
And it's not a winning formula for this team. I mean, that Rocket team that got to a Game 7 against the Warriors in 2018 where James Harden was the MVP, and he basically dominated the ball like you see Brunson do now. That's a totally different team. This team, the amazing thing to me is that Karl Anthony Towns, who is a premier, I don't have to tell you guys out there, you know what he can do offensively. He's actually taken fewer shots than OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges in this series.
That's absurd.
Now that's criminal, and that's Tibbs.
Yep.
Sorry, Tom.
Yeah.
You know what? You and your point guard have to realize what you have in Karl Anthony Towns, and I'm sure J.V. Bickerstaff is very, very happy that the Knicks have this approach where Brunson is just dribbling the heck out of the ball, the blood out of the ball. Karl Anthony Towns is not a factor at all. He's got to the free throw line twice in 72 minutes of court time.
Yes.
I mean, he is an all-star. The reason Karl Anthony Towns is an all-star type player is because he's offensively a gifted, tremendously gifted, especially he can score in many different ways, including three-point shooting. And to have him taken out of this series like that, and it's not just the Pistons, it's Brunson not looking for him, not doing pick and rolls with him, and it's Tom Thibodeau. I don't know what Tom's doing on the bench, but if the Knicks lose a couple more times, lose the series, he might get fired.
Yeah,
because James Dolan, I know Leon Rose is, Tom's guy, the general manager, but the boss of the whole thing, the owner of the team, is a guy who expects to have a lot of home playoff games, at least into the second round. And if Denver can fire Mike Malone, who won a title a couple of years ago with the Cronkies, who are much more patient historically than James Dolan when it comes to, giving guys the exit, Tom better be careful. He better be careful. And the offense right now, with the talent that they have, and I'm not telling you that they are a top team. We know they've struggled against the Bostons, the Clevelands, the Oklahoma City. For the Knicks to score like 94 points last night with Karl Anthony Towns, not, in the second half, 19 minutes, 0 for 3 field goal attempts in 19 minutes. That's unacceptable.
Completely.
They got to go back and rework their offense before Game 3.
No question. And there were a lot of stretches in the regular season where I saw the same thing, and they got, people didn't always want to talk about it because Brunson has got great crunch time numbers, as you know. But I still believe if they wanted to grow, which is postseason, right? That they absolutely had to figure that out. Then they still clearly have not. Clippers for real?
Yeah. Because you know why? Because Kawhi's for real. I mean, listen, Kawhi Leonard. This is like 2019 Kawhi Leonard, 6 years ago. His last series where he played every game of a series that was played was a 7-gamer against the Mavericks, I think in 2021.
Wow.
And since then, he's missed an entire playoff season. He's been spotty in a few other series where he had to miss games. Right now, he's probably the best player in the sport, which is hard to. I mean, it's hard to believe in a series that Nikola Jokic might be the second best player now.
Right.
I picked the Clippers to win this series. And still, to me, I mean, listen, I'm not giving up on Denver. But what I liked about this series was the last 30-odd games of the regular season, Kawhi Leonard was playing at an MVP level, and he can do it at both ends. Last night, besides delivering big baskets, he was a stopper at the defensive end like he always is. And he can, he won't deal with Jokic, but he can shut down other people. And the other thing about this series that just stuck out to me is that, Denver made a decision that they think that they can win a playoff series. They have a better chance with Adelman as the coach. David Adelman, then Mike Malone, who won him a title, going against guys like Ty Lue and Jeff Van Gundy, who has helped turn the Clippers into a top 5, 6, 7 defensive team, which is kind of crazy thinking. They got a bad matchup because they're seeing Kawhi Leonard, who's healthy. Who knows when he's going to go down? That's always a big question. And they're seeing a premier defensive team while David Adelman is trying to figure out things for the first time on the fly, first time in the playoffs against Ty Lue, who won the title in Cleveland, and Jeff Van Gundy, who had great playoff success in New York, at least got the Knicks to one finals against the Spurs in '99. It's a tall order for Denver. I tell you, I picked the Clippers, and I think if they play Oklahoma City in the next round, and it looks like that's going to happen, I think they could. I don't know if they can beat them, but they will definitely win a few games in that series.
It's an interesting series, that's for sure. Do you see anybody touching Boston in the East?
No, and I haven't been, as much as I like what Kenny Atkinson as Cleveland has done. My big thing about Cleveland this year was, how are the bigs going to do in a series against Boston? I'm talking about Jared Allen, who can get hurt. He's missed some playoff time occasionally. He can be a little soft. Mobley, his best days are still ahead of him. He's still young. I worried about how they would deal with Boston. Plus, Boston's won a title. They know now what it takes. That always, to me, goes a long way with these teams. As long as Porzingis can play, I thought they would steamroll through the East, probably take out Cleveland in 6, and then, whoever comes out of the West, I would still favor Boston. Yeah. I know the team that emerges from the West, you'll say, well, they'll have all the battle scars and they'll be the best team. But, I still think I'd have to favor Boston, because if Brown's knee is right and Tatum's wrist is okay and the other players they have, they got too many guys who can beat you.
How badly is Nico praying for a Lakers sweep in the first round at the hands of the Timberwolves? Huh?
Well, the amazing thing is he keeps doing these press conferences which aren't doing him any favors.
No.
I mean, for him to come out yesterday and basically say, I did not know. He said, I did know that Luka was important to the fan base. I didn't quite know to what level. Put that on his tombstone. Put that on his general managerial tombstone. I don't know if he'll get another job, because the trade is just, for Maverick fans are still in they're just absolutely furious still. And it just gets worse and worse on social media and what people talk around town at their water coolers at the companies, that this guy just continues to dig himself a grave in terms of the whole trade. So, yes, he is rooting like heck that the T-Wolves do him a solid and get rid of Luka. But, there's still going to be the future to play out, not just Luka in L.A., but, what's Anthony Davis going to be like, right? Down the road. Of course, the last game of the year when they get beat, as you saw, he exits the game hurt.
Yeah.
As it's kind of like it's fitting. It's usual. And by the way, I don't know if you saw this, but it was the Mavericks are eliminated from playoff contention in the playing game 77 days after the Luka trade. How's that?
Yeah, it's nightmarish for sure. It never stops.
Yeah. I talked to our old friend Randy Galloway the other day. I'll drop that big name on you. Randy, the great columnist, radio voice here at the Metroplex. And he told me, he said, as many crazy PR missteps as Jerry Jones has had over the years, and the Rangers had their share over the years. He said he has never seen anything like this. And, he's been around here since they opened town.
Since 1906, I think. Yeah.
Never seen anything like this, Nico Harrison, in terms of just the PR blunder.
Yeah, it's stunning.
In addition to what looks like one of the worst trades in the history of sports.
It makes some of the old Dallas Mavericks Norm Sanju faux pas seem like double-A ball, correct?
Oh, I mean, and you know what the amazing thing is? People walk around here saying, we still have no idea why they did it.
Yes. It's absolutely stunning.
Without rhyme or reason. So it's just crazy. And, Mavericks going forward. I don't know how long Luka survives. Nico, I should say. But boy, he is on. There's no team right now that's fan base is as irate against the team as the Mavericks. As the Mavericks are, the Maverick fans are. It's crazy.
Not in a long, long time. Great work as always, my friend. We'll check in a couple of weeks as the playoffs continue.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, man.
Talk to you later.
I appreciate you. Mitch Lawrence, you can hear him, longtime writer, NBA writer, Dallas Morning News, then spent a number of years in New York, primarily at the Daily News, and has written for a lot of other publications. These days he's doing just more radio work, Sirius XM NBA channel as well. Always fun to have Mitch on. Don't forget Louie to preview Game 2 of a different sport, the world of hockey, the Wild in Vegas to take on the Golden Knights in Game number 2, which, of course, you can hear on the Fan. It's apparently the shortest pregame show in the history of mankind. Top 5 will include what?
We'll touch on all of our clubs, a surprise exit, and a surprise return.